Human Geography, 7th edition, Chapter 5, Part 3. One of the criticisms of Ant has been that it treats humans as indifferentiated and lacking in affect and emotion as they go about their business of social life in attempting to go further into what it means to be human, and particularly into what it is present in human experience. Cultural geographers have become increasingly interested in non-representational theory. In brief, non-representational theory, NRT, understands human life as a process that is always unfolding, always becoming something different, even if only slightly so. It recognizes that much of this becoming occurs outside of conscious thought. Because much of human existence is precognitive, decisions are made before the conscious self is aware of them. And RT is interested in those moments of indeterminacy when events emerge that produce new orderings that may persist or give way to older, more settled ones. These are moments we have all experienced when something happens that no one expected, and yet in which everyone participated in enabling the new ordering to emerge. This focus on indeterminacy means that NRT's task is a difficult one, that it attempts to attend to things that words as representations cannot express. Geographer Ben Anderson has used non-representational theory to explore memory and music. His work is concerned with how the process of listening to music produced both remembering and forgetting within the context of ordinary living. He describes a young woman whom he interviewed listening to music as a background to her getting ready for work. As she sits flipping through a magazine and eating breakfast with a Frank Sinatra tune playing in the background, she suddenly hears her mother, who died several years ago, before singing along to the music. It's a moment from her past. Her mother would frequently sing along to all music, and this song was one of her favorites. And at that moment, the young woman is transported from her apartment back in space and time to her family home. The woman notes that when this happened, she got shivery feelings really suddenly. Anderson identifies that shivery feeling as affect emotions that are embodied reactions to the social and physical environment. Affect is also about the power of these emotions to result in or enable action. Others have described having their national anthem produces an almost incredible feeling. An almost indescribable feeling. Even when a person does not consider him or herself patriotic or is uncomfortable in general with displays of nationalism. And yet many of these same people also describe a kind of sudden shivery feeling that involuntarily occurs when the music begins and the whole stadium stands in respect and recognition of being a part of something larger than the individual. NRT is keenly interested in events in which things suddenly shift and something involuntary occurs. And it is particularly interested in events when whole groups experience something not anticipated in advance. These are moments that held significant political potential. For example, in Tunisia, in the spring of 2011, the self-immolation of a fruit seller ignited a city's anger at their political disposition, launching a political event that spread across the Middle East. Emotional geographies, in addition to an interest in affect and NRT geographers, also explore emotion. Those who study emotion differentiate it from the effect by specifying that emotion is a personal feeling based on one's biography or a social context. Emotion is a response to an internal state of being. Affect, by contrast, is non-conscious experience of intensity. It is always outside of conscious awareness, facial expression, or tone of voice. For instance, have the capacity to transmit affect. Once transmitted, emotions register the ways our bodies and our minds react to those expressions. We may become excited or afraid as we process the intensity of those expressions. Our emotional response depends on who we are and what our social conditioning has been. Geographers are particularly interested on how emotions are tied to places, how different environments, for instance, produce different emotional responses. Because emotions are a central component of being human, they possess the potential to both shape and be shaped by geography. In addition, emotions can both emerge from as well as produce spatial orders, and thus geographers are interested in understanding how emotions are part of the various elements that make up what it's like to live in a place or or operate in a particular space. Materialism, both and non-representational theory, share an interest in matter and materiality. Materialism emphasizes that the material world is objects and non-human entities, is at least partly separate from humans and possesses the power to affect humans. A materialist approach is about attempting to understand the ways that specific properties of material things affect the interactions between humans and non-human entities. What materialism adds to NRT and is a commitment to understanding the material world as it unfolds in unpredictable ways. Both theories can point to real physical and mental entities as significant to our attempts to explain the world, and they both recognize that humans are not separate from or in any way superior to the world of things. The aim of these new ways of thinking about cultural geography, is to rethink how material objects work in the world so that they come to be seen as lively, having real force and intensity in the world. When seen in terms of cultural geography, the materialism that is at the center of these new ways of thinking directs our attention to how cultural beliefs and values gain permanence and power through material form, buildings, symbols, commodities, or rituals. The Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, a military uniform, a diamond ring, a Thanksgiving meal shape us and affect the way we recognize by others. Globalization and cultural change. Anyone who has ever traveled between major world cities will have noticed the familiar aspects of contemporary life in settings that until recently were thought of as being quite different from another. Airports, offices, and international hotels have become notoriously alike, and their similarities of architecture and interior design have become reinforced by the near universal dress codes of the people who frequent them. For example, the business suit, especially for males, has become the norm. For office workers throughout much of the world, jeans, t-shirts, and cell phones, meanwhile, have become the norm for young people as well as those in lower wage jobs. Americanization and globalization. It is these commonalities as well as others, such as the same automobiles, television shows, popular music, food, and global brands like McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and Apple, that provide a sense of familiarity. To court travels abroad from the point of view of cultural nationalism, the lowest common denominator of this familiarity is often seen as the culture of fast food and popular entertainment that emanates from the United States. Popular commentators have observed that cultures around the world are being Americanized. See Chapter 2. This process represents the beginnings of a single global culture based on material consumption with the English language as its medium. This is certainly some evidence to support this point of view, not least in the sheer numbers of people around the world who view American Idol, drink Coca-Cola, and eat in McDonald's franchises or similar fast food chains. Largely through consumer goods, U.S. culture is increasingly embraced by local entrepreneurs around the world. It seems clear that U.S. products are consumed as much for their symbolism of a particular way of life as for their intrinsic value. McDonald's burgers, along with Coca-Cola, Hollywood movies, rock music, and NFL and NBA insignia have become associated with a lifestyle package that feature luxury, youth, fitness, beauty, and freedom. It is important to recognize, however, that U.S. products often undergo changes when they travel across the globe. For instance, L'Oreal, a Paris-based international corporation and the leading mass-market producer of cosmetics, skin and hair care products, and fragrances, is very aware of the need to vary its products for their consumption. In non-French markets, its website provides insight into the wide variety of skin types, hair type, and treatment preferences across the world. For instance, one of their pages is devoted to understanding when the diversity of types of beauty inspires science, thus linking their research aims with a sense that beauty is a category that varies throughout the world. On a linked page entitled, quote, Expert in Skin and Hair Types Around the World, is a color chart displaying 66 tones called a new geography of skin color. L'Oreal believes this mapping of skin color allows the company to adapt their cosmetics to the expectations of different national consumers. Box 5.4 window on the world. Geographies of Plastic Surgery provides a contrast to L'Oreal's aim to cater to difference in cultural norms of beauty by showing how the increasing population of plastic surgery around the world appears to be premised on narrow, largely Western notions of beauty. Here is see if I can, there's a good clear shot. I don't know what that was. It's all right. My kid's eating food in here. Okay. The same might be said of other cultural products emanating from the U.S. entertainment industry. Today, the entertainment industry is the leading source of foreign income in the United States with a trade surplus of over $25 billion. The originals of over half of all the books translated in the world, more than 25,000 titles, are written in English, for the majority of which are produced by U.S. publishers. In terms of international flows of everything from mail and phone calls to press agency reports, television programs, radio shows, and movies, a disproportionately large share originates in the United States. What this huge export of U.S. entertainment products suggest is that the market is being saturated by U.S. cultural norms to the disadvantage of local ones. Yet neither the widespread consumption of U.S. and U.S. style products nor the increasing familiarity of people around the world with global media and the internet and international brand names adds up to the emergence of a single global culture. Rather, what is happening is that processes of globalization are exposing the world's inhabitants to a common set of products, symbols, myths, memories, events, cult figures, landscapes, and tradition. People living in Tokyo or Tucson, Turin or Timbuktu may be perfectly familiar with these commonalities without necessarily using or responding to them in uniform ways. It is also important to recognize that cultural flows take place in all directions, not just outward from the United States. Think, for example, of European fashions in U.S. stores of Chinese, Indian, Italian, Mexican, and Thai restaurants in U.S. towns and cities, and of U.S. and European stores selling exotic craft goods from the periphery. A global culture. The answer to the question of whether there is a global culture must therefore be no, or at least there is no undisputable sign of it. While people around the world share an increasing familiarity with a common set of products, symbols, and events, many of which originate in the U.S. culture of fast food and popular entertainment, these commonalities are configured in different ways, in different places, rather constituting a single global culture. The local interacts with the global, often producing hybrid cultures. Sometimes traditional local cultures become the subject of global consumption. Sometimes it is the other way around. Here's the top 10 features, films, and the information on that. Go ahead and zoom in on this so that you can read this at your leisure. This is the worldviews. I'm trying to get rid of the glare. And then here, I'll get a close-up of this so you can see the map overall. Excuse me. An illustration of absence of homogeneous global culture is world music. The musical genre defined largely by the surge of non-English language recordings released in the United Kingdom and the United States during the 1980s. The term is one employed primarily by the media and record stores, and it is included such diverse sources as Tuvan, throat singers, and Malian griots. Throat singing is a performance style originating in south-central Russia, where the vocal sounds are projected from the throat, allowing 2 or 4 tones to be simultaneously produced by the singer. Griots were ancient praise singers of West Africa and also important advisors to royalty. There are at least 2 major views on the effect of globalization and indigenous musical productions. The first emphasizes how the Western music industry has enabled indigenous music to be more widely disseminated and therefore more widely known and appreciated. This position sees local roots mixing with Western popular musical styles, with a hybrid sound resulting. The second view worries that the influence of Western musical styles and the Western music industry have transformed indigenous musical productions to the point where their authenticity has been lost and global musical heterogeneity diminished. Despite their fundamental disagreement, holders of both positions recognize that world music had enabled cultural diversity to flourish and hope that indigenous performers will be able to resist the power of the Western music industry to homogenize their work, and that the same time hybrid forms will emerge that are satisfying to a wide subsistence. Future geographies. In 2005, the United Nations made history by adopting the Convention of the Protection of the Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions, CDPGE. The convention is a legally binding international agreement that ensures artists, cultural professions, practitioners, and citizens worldwide can create, produce, disseminate, and enjoy a broad range of cultural goods, services, and activities, including their own. The UN Convention is just one way that governing entities are actively working to encourage and protect culture and creativity in a rapidly changing world. Given this growing commitment to recognize and proactively appreciating the relevance of cultural diversity to the global community, it seems reasonable to predict that culture, in both of its materials as well as less tangible manifestations, will continue to be the focus of formal attention and support well into the future. Importantly, connections across global space are making it increasingly possible for distant groups to share their ideas, cultural practices, and products in a way that helps both circulate and sustain them. Geographers who work with culture as their research focus are beneficiaries of these trends as they seek to understand how culture is produced and maintained and how it morphs as it is practiced and shared across distances that once would have prohibited contact. The UNCDBG is just one example of how cultural diversity matters in globalizing world. 133 countries, as well as the European Union, have ratified the CDGP. CPDCE, pledging to protect and foster creativity and cultural diversity. With the broad commitment to cultural diversity well established across the globe, there appears to be, at the very least, a clear recognition of its presence and future importance to social economic development, environmental sustainability, peace, and security. Interestingly, at the same time that nations across the globe are reaching out to protect cultural diversity, cultural majorities in the United States are collapsing. As we saw in Chapter 3, predominantly Black urban neighborhoods are receiving large influxes of Hispanics at the same time that white rural communities are changing as Asian and Hispanic migrants are moving there as well. The U.S. Census projects that white Americans will soon be a large minority among many other populous minorities. It appears that in the next decade or so, Americans will all be cultural minorities, as there will be no majority cultural groups. Scholars have stated that there are no clear precedents to human history for such a culturally diverse place as the United States is soon to become. Here is the cultural domains. I'll get one big back shot. There we go. And then that way, if you want to take notes, because this is pretty important so that you can kind of... So, conclusion. Culture is a complex and exceedingly important concept within the discipline of geography. A number of approaches exist to understanding culture. It may be approached through a range of elements and features from single traits. A number of approaches exist to understanding culture. It may be approached through a range of elements and features from single traits to complex systems. Cultural geography recognizes the complexity of culture and emphasizes the role of space, place, and landscape, and the ecological relationships between cultures and their environments. It distinguishes itself from the other discipline between cultures and their environments. It distinguishes itself from other disciplinary approaches, providing unique insights that reveal how culture shapes the worlds we live in. At the same time that the worlds we inhabit shape culture, cultural geography is a diverse subfield that incorporates three general approaches. The first, traditional cultural geography, is a reflection of the work of Carl Sauer, who understands landscape as the definitive unit of geography study. The second approach is centered on identity, ideology, power, meaning, power and meaning, gender and sexuality, race and ethnicity, as well as age and disability, are frequent empirical objects of this approach. Most recently, cultural geography has been influenced by what has come to be known as the non-representational approach. Cultural geographers who are non-representational reject what they see as static views of space inherent in more conventional approaches, and turn instead to an empirical focus on embodied practices and dynamic processes and how best to comprehend them and their effects without sacrificing their dynamism. Cultural geographers continue to embrace all of these things. I'm so sorry this morning. Of these approaches in their aims to understand how culture is the product of humans' relationship with the world around them, a world that is alive with symbols, artifacts, practices, and discourses. That was a tongue twister. I'm sorry, guys. Here is the learning the outcomes. I will go ahead and then here's the key terms. The review and discussion. Here's the unplugged. I'll try and get close on that so that you can pause and see if you can get that. The interactive mat. Always like those. There we go. That's a good one. And that is the end of chapter 5. Thank you so much for bearing with me this morning, guys. Thank you.